Hello. So let's talk about our intuition. So one of the hugest ways to fully embrace your third eye chakra, to completely be in a space where you can understand how to expand the third eye, open the third eye, is 100% strengthening your intuition. So I had some really good questions from our community come through about intuition. And one of the hugest ones that I wanted to cover was, how do I know the difference between my intuition and my ego? How do I know when to understand that I'm coming from my intuition? And how do I get into my intuition? Do I have to be in a particular meditation? Do I have to do certain things to get into intuition? What do I need to do? So we're going to dive into all of that in this week's episode. Stay tuned. Hey guys, so it's Ashley from the Awaken State. So I just had a cold, so bear with me if I sound a little bit nasally. I'm still fully getting over it. So one thing I want to talk about is how our third eye chakra really connects profoundly to our intuition. And one thing I want to take you through is just a brief awareness on the core components that rule the third eye chakra. Honestly, it's such divine timing to talk about intuition and third eyes because I just had a head cold. So my sinuses were obviously off, which meant that my third eye was off, which meant that I needed to do my own third eye work. We teach what we need to learn. All right. So when you think about the third eye, okay, for those that don't know, the third eye is about right here. And so the third eye chakra literally is connected to our perception, our decision-making process, our brain, and basically how we make really intuitive movement in our life through our intuition. And our third eye chakra governs our sense of perception, our sense of decision, our sense of inner knowing, our intuition. And it governs a lot how we connect to our spiritual guidance system. And so when it comes to starting to work with your third eye chakra, it is always, always, always about strengthening your connection to higher self, strengthening your intuition, and most importantly, getting better at decision. Decision is a huge component to the third eye chakra. One that we probably are not thinking about because we think we need to do meditation, we need to do all these things, right? But actually, it's our decision-making process that really helps our third eye, because it's understanding decision that it connects to our intuition. When we're really hesitant on making a decision, it actually means that we're no longer listening to our intuition. We're second guessing, we're analyzing, we're freaking out, we're weighing pros and cons. We're no longer in our intuition. So when you start to look at the third eye chakra, I want you to kind of expand your perception of maybe what you've already known. Maybe you thought it was just about psychic abilities. Maybe you thought it was just about only your intuition, or maybe you thought it was about talking to your spirit guides. I really don't know. There are various components and layers to the third eye chakra. One of the hugest being our perception. And one of the coolest ways to understand our third eye chakra is to realize that usually when we're in fear, we're getting stuck in a limited perception instead of looking at limitless perceptions of possibilities of how that could be. And one of the hugest reasons why we have a third eye block is because we're stuck in a limited perception and we're not choosing to see the limitless perceptions around us, usually due to fear. So when you think about it, I want you to consider this, that when you go into understanding your intuition, you have to realize that you're basically working with your third eye chakra. You're working with opening up your perception of your intuition and learning how to strengthen that core relationship to your higher self. So let's go in with that. Now, when we think about our intuition, we have to also consider not just decision, but self-trust. We have to go into understanding that our ability to trust ourselves is a firm foundation of how we can strengthen our intuition. Why? Because if we don't trust ourselves, we're going to constantly be in this game of, did I do it right? Is this right? I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Essentially, when we get into that headspace, we're over analyzing, overthinking, over critiquing, over criticizing, over compensating, overdoing, over analyzing, over. Basically, we've no longer tapped into the intuition. And instead, what occurs is we are fully in a space of overthinking, overanalyzing. We're in beta. We're essentially in beta wave frequency. So when we think about different brain waves, our intuition operates at a slower brain wave. And our intuition is more so happening in that alpha, the delta, even the theta wave frequency. But more so, I want to say alpha is the main component. Alpha and delta are really where you're really honed in on your intuition. So anything that can take you into that particular state of consciousness is how you access your intuition fully. Is you have to tap into that alpha wave frequency, because that is the core root of how you get into your intuition. And basically, you're reconnecting to soul. And when you understand that as a core concept, you can see that your intuition itself is going to be dominated around how you take decisions in life, because that's how your intuition is being strengthened. So one of the easiest ways to strengthen your intuition is to start working on how do you make decisions, which is kind of like an unorthodox kind of like, what? I thought we were going to talk about spirit guides, and I thought we were going to talk about all these cool things. No, like actually, I want you to think about the more practical lens first, because it will help you grasp it even faster. Because it will show you a lot about, am I making a decision out of fear, or am I making a decision from my intuition? Am I making a decision where I feel really uncertain and like drained, cloudy, foggy? It suddenly feels hard. It's confusing. That's when you notice that you're actually out of alignment with your decision. And you're not just willing to intuitively be pulled to knowing that that's the right decision. And there's a different vibe and a different energy when you look at it like that, because there's a totally different conversation when you're coming at it from fear versus soul, your soul's intuition. Because when you're coming at it from fear, it's going to feel drained. It's going to feel heavy. It might feel chaotic. It might feel like a struggle, like going back and forth with yourself. It could feel like a stopping and starting. So first thing I want you to do is to look at those decisions. Like, how are you making a decision? Are you overthinking, overanalyzing? Or are you just, of course, this is what I'm supposed to do. I already know what to do. So when we come at it from self-trust and decision, we can start to use a level of discernment with what is right for us and what is wrong for us. So, and that keeps us tuned in to being in alignment versus misalignment. Whenever you find yourself fighting yourself, whenever you find yourself like really kind of caught up in this loop of like, should I do this? Should I not do this? I'm overthinking, I'm overanalyzing. You're in your head. And because you're overly in your head, and I do this all the time, and I've really worked to train myself to really be more tuned back into the body. But when we're in our heads, we're overthinking, and then we're stuck in that beta wave where we're processing a lot of information. And so we're basically trying to use our past evidence to create our decision. And what will happen is we're kind of using too much thought to create an outcome. And so as a result, it creates inaction or forced pushy action. And we don't make good decisions when we're in that state of not mind, because when we're in that state of mind, we do not have that distinct level of discernment that we would normally have if we were just coming from using our intuition, being tapped in fully to soul. Now, so how do we understand the difference between if we're an ego or if we're in an intuition? How do we distinguish those two different voices? Well, they're highly different. When you're an ego, you'll basically be talking to your inner mean girl, and it will feel fearful. It will feel like a struggle. It will feel like as if you have like you're overthinking. You're in this space where you're trying to overanalyze and you're overthinking and you're overcompensating in what you're doing or what you're saying or what you're thinking about a situation. It's where you've suddenly let like your mind do the talking for you. And when you're in that space, your ego is on like warp speed, like overthinking the situation, replaying all of the past thoughts that you had about this situation, replaying all of the past feelings and behaviors, and you're in this cycle basically. And it's because you're in the beta wave frequency, because you're too trapped in the head and you're not enough tuned into the body where the intuition is present and alive and thriving. So when we're too much in our heads and we let the ego keep doing the talking, we can't hear our intuition anymore. Like we've literally tapped out of that frequency because we're in high beta. So because we're in high beta wave frequency, we cannot access our intuition. And as a result, we're like, this is how I did it in the past. So because I did this way in the past, obviously these are the right actions I need to take. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to do it that way though, because I have to think about all the ways that it didn't work that way. But now I need to think about this. And then before you know it, you're not taking any action because you're in beta, you're overthinking the situation, you're overcompensating, and you're overdoing the situation, essentially. And because of that, the inner mean girl has come out and says all of the reasons why you need to stop in your tracks right now before you take action. And that's the way that our brain works when we're in ego, when we're in fear, because it's going to essentially kind of put up the roadblocks of why you can't take that action. Now, when we're in soul, it's a totally different conversation. It's a totally different conversation because you're dropped into the body and you can hear your intuition. And your intuition is fast. Your intuition is often the thought that becomes before thinking. So it'll be like a moment like that, and all of a sudden you're like, I know exactly what I need to do. Or it'll be a sudden nudge or like an inkling or like, oh, why didn't I do it that way? That sounds so amazing. I should totally do it that way. And then sometimes it's more subtle where it feels just like, I just intuitively know I need to do it like this. So I'm going to go to this website and I'm going to sign up for this thing. And that's just how it works, because what occurs is your magnetism is magnetic. And so your intuition is magnetic. That's what I'm trying to say. Bear with me here. Your intuition is magnetic. It will pull you and guide you as your internal guidance system towards what you need. When we cannot hear it, we're listening to the ego. When we're overly analyzing and overly critical of ourselves, and it's coming from fear, it will feel heavy, draining, contracting, and it will feel as if we're kind of like sluggish almost. So like fear has a very dense energy. When you're in fear, when you're in ego, you will feel it as dense energy. It feels draining. It feels low. It feels very sluggish and unmotivating. And it just kind of feels like off. And that isn't to say that isn't different from feeling exhausted. Because, you know, exhausted sometimes like I have to listen to my body. I have to listen to what I'm doing. And I have to make sure I'm resting. So then I can be, you know, that's a different energy. I'm talking about when you feel super unmotivated, sluggish, drained, and just kind of blah. That is like when you're in the ego too much. When you're in soul and intuition, things are kind of like in your face, fast, moving forward, moving, going, going, going. And sometimes it's also like a step back. Like, I don't need to take action right now. I should just go enjoy my life. That's cool. Whatever. And other times it's like fast. So I think the key in discernment with intuition is it's always going to come from a good place. Like, intuition is like, there might be scary action that you move forward with, such as like doing a Facebook Live for the first time or something, where it's like you're excited but nervous, but also intuitively pulled to do that thing. But for the most part, our intuition will be the thought before the thought. So it'll be that thought that comes without much thinking at all. It'll be that sudden nudge that you have to like I have to completely do this whole thing completely different just because I just have this feeling that this is exactly what I need to be doing. It's a feeling that produces a thought, and it's fast because you're listening to your soul. And the fastest way to listen to soul is to drop into your body. And a lot of people don't want to drop into their body because they're used to listening to the ego. So the more that we tune back into the body is when we ultimately hear our intuition. So the only way we can actually understand the difference between our ego and our intuition is really very simply. We'll feel contracted and drained and in a fear-led vibration when we're coming from our ego. It will feel like our inner critic, whereas our intuition will usually feel very positive, very forward momentum. It will feel as if we're in a space where we're in a resonance with who we are. So we will essentially be more pulled into alignment, and we'll be magnetically pulled and led towards what we are essentially going after. So that will help us with our intuition. Now, finally, there was another question. It was, can I only access my intuition from meditation? This is a really good one. So here's the thing about accessing your intuition. You can always access your intuition, but the reality is it's actually more like strengthening a muscle. So if you're not familiar with your intuition and you've been heavily relying on your ego, then you might need some practice strengthening the muscle of your intuition with practice, with using that self-trust, with building that level of quick decision making. But most importantly, knowing that you can access your intuition all the time. You don't have to do a set practice to get into your intuition. How you get into your intuition is by being present in your body. That is the fastest way to get into intuition. The more that you can practice with discernment on what helps you get present in your body, then that will help you cultivate your intuition. So basically, whatever brings you into an alpha or a delta wave frequency will literally snap you into your intuition. So, but here's the thing, and I've said this numerous times, you can allow yourself to drop into the feminine flow where your intuition is. And you do that by overriding the resistance. You do not need to meditate, then get into intuition. You don't need to do a specific journaling practice to get into your intuition. You don't need to do a certain mantra or a ritual or anything. You can literally allow yourself to get into the drop and allow soul to come through. But you can only do that when you're not in super high beta. Like, if you're already in the overthinking, overanalyzing, and you're caught up in the loop already, then yeah, you might need a journaling session, meditation. You might need, yoga or hardcore exercise. You might need something that helps essentially take you over the bridge into the flow state. But to just 360 into the flow state, you can do that. You don't need a particular tool to do that. Like, you are your strongest asset. Like, you are the strongest spiritual tool you have. Like, you don't have to do certain things to get into a particular state. You can literally override the resistance of the ego and drop into soul. And this is one thing I teach a lot in the Reconnect to Soul Challenge, is you do things that help you get into soul flow, but you can also learn how to just drop into soul flow. And that's one of the things that I think is so powerful, is we have to realize the more we practice strengthening our intuition, the easier it becomes to just drop into our intuition. Okay, so I hope that cleared up everything for you. I had a lot of fun talking about these new questions. If you have more questions about intuition or chakras, I would love to hear them in the comments. Please let me know. Finally, we do have a new chakra masterclass coming out, and it is the Chakra Detox Masterclass. You can sign up below. It features my 3-step framework on how you can detox your chakras for manifesting success. And I teach a lot about the mind-body connection, how to use the framework, and most importantly, how you can essentially detox your chakras with this entirely new framework that I created. It's going to be featured in the Ultimate Chakra Academy, which will be opening soon. So you can find all those links down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Love ya.